Now, coming to then comes Article 21. This is most important provision of the Constitution. So, Article 21 says, no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. See, this provision has only 18 words, but these 18 words are very, very important and subject to one of the provisions that have been subjected to very wide interpretation is Article 21. Article 19, Article 21 are subjected to very, very wide interpretations. அதுலயும் particularly 19 class 1 subclass A, very particularly in 19 class 1 subclass A, the term expression. This has been subjected to very, very wide interpretation. All right. Fine. First thing at the very outset, you should understand this before we deal with Article 21 in any way. So, when it comes to Article 21, there are three important things. It confers on every person within the territory of India the right to life and the right to personal liberty. At the same time, it also confers upon the state though it is negatively worded, it confers the right to deprive these rights. Because Article 21 says, no person shall be deprived of his right to life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. Subject to one condition. What is the condition? The deprivation can take place only according to the procedure established by law. So, we have right to life, we have right to personal liberty, authority of the state to deprive, and the term procedure established by law. All the 18 words are important. So, first before we go into what is right to life, what is right to personal liberty, we shall first understand what is this authority of the state and particularly the condition. The condition is procedure established by law. The Supreme Court in the Maneka Gandhi case has ruled that the procedure is not a mere procedure but a due process which should withstand the test of reasonableness. Okay, what do you mean by this? Let us try to understand the history. See, when it comes to this procedure established by law, there are two cases. One is A.K. Gopalan case, the other is Maneka Gandhi case. First, we will discuss what is this A.K. Gopalan case. A.K. Gopalan was a communist leader of Kerala. All right. And he was detained under the Preventive Detention Act. Shall I rub this off? Fine. See, what happens? A.K. Gopalan was arrested under preventive detention in order to prevent him from leading a procession or partaking in a protest meeting. So, what happens is when you When a person is arrested, obviously his right to freedom of movement is curtailed, right? Huh? So he was arrested under the Preventive Detention Act of 1950, and because a person has been arrested and detained, his right to freedom of movement is curtailed. Now, A.K. Gopalan moves the Supreme Court under Article 32, right to constitutional remedies. He contested, he pleaded before the court. His prayer was Article 21 guarantees the right to personal liberty. All right. And this personal liberty must not be viewed as a singular right, but it is a package of different rights. Because personal liberty is not one right. What is personal liberty? How will you define personal liberty? So Gopalan said, personal liberty is not a single, for instance, it is not like right to freedom of speech. Personal liberty is a package. When you interpret it, when you open it wide, we get to see that the term personal liberty includes various other rights. So it is a parcel. So when the right to personal liberty is deprived by the authority of the state, we have to consider personal liberty not as a singular right but as a package, and which is that particular right, part of personal liberty is being violated or is being restricted, and whether that restriction is reasonable or not. This was his contention. When he is arrested under the Preventive Detention Act, his right to freedom of movement is restricted, right? So, in this case, the right to freedom of movement guaranteed by Article 19, Class 1, Subclass D, which is the right to freedom of movement, is being curtailed by detaining him under the Preventive Detention Act of 1950. Now, Article 19, Class 5 clearly states that when the right to freedom of movement guaranteed by 19 Class 1 Subclass D is to be restricted, it can be restricted by a law only on the grounds given in 19 Class 5. What are the grounds given in 19 Class 5? What are the grounds given? Check. You have to remember it, because what if that is asked in the question? Public order and the interest of scheduled tribes. 19 Class 5. The right to freedom of movement can be restricted. Right to freedom of movement and right to freedom of reside and settle anywhere within the territory of India can be restricted only on the grounds of public order or in the interest of scheduled tribes. Is it there? 19 Class 5. Class 5. Class 6 is restriction upon right to freedom of profession or carry on trade, business or occupation. Look at 19 Class 5. General public interest and the protection of the interest of. So there are only two grounds. One is general public interest and second is protection of the interest of scheduled tribes. Now A.K. Gopalan says, my personal liberty is being violated because how, from where does the state take the, see here, see, remember one thing, you have to understand one thing very clearly. when it comes to reasonable restriction upon the fundamental rights, the maximum restriction is deprivation. According to the Supreme Court, if you look at the book, I have given it reasonable restrictions. The reasonable restriction can be substantive and procedurally reasonable, and if it is substantive and procedurally reasonable, the restriction can be to the extent of 100%. What happened with lockdown? Our right to freedom of movement was completely restricted. Remember, we were actually deprived. Can you deprive it? Court said yes. If the grounds are if the grounds are there to prove that it is reasonable, then the restriction can be 100%. From where does the authority to deprive the rights come to the state? Article 21. That is the reason why A.K. Gopalan is relating 21 and 19. Otherwise, there is no point in relating. How is 19 and 21 related? So, A.K. Gopalan said the authority of the state to deprive a person of his right to personal liberty is from Article 21. So, when I am detained under the under the Preventive Detention Act of 1950, my personal liberty is violated or my personal liberty is deprived. Exercising its power, drawing its power from Article 21, the state is restricting, depriving me of personal liberty by way of restricting my freedom of movement, which was guaranteed by 19 clause from subclass D. Right? This is what his contention is. Now, fifth point he says, what he says is, so reading Article 21 and 19 together, if there was a reasonableness, if there was a reasonable ground, then the state has the power to, authority to deprive a person of personal liberty and life. Because reasonable restrictions, if the grounds are reasonable, the restriction can go to the extent of deprivation. Clear? Clear? Now, when the restriction is capable of going to the extent of depriving the right, the condition is it should be reasonable. The grounds on which the restriction is imposed to the maximum must be reasonable. Now, when we look at this personal liberty which is being deprived, then we have to look at two things. One is what are the grounds, the other is whether the ground is reasonable. Here, what is being deprived is my right to freedom of movement. There is a provision in Article 19 clause from subclass D which guarantees the right to freedom of movement to all citizens, upon which if the restriction is to be made, then the grounds are given in 19 clause 5. Therefore, subject to Article 19 clause 5, the state has to prove that the detention of A.K. Gopalan was on reasonable grounds, either in the general public interest. What is the general public interest which will be violated if I take part in the procession? Because it is a democratic way of dissenting. If it is against general public interest, why did the government give permission? The government has, the Communist Party of India has asked for the permission to the government to organize a protest meeting. The government has granted, which means there is a right to express, right to freedom of expressing dissent upheld. It is a democratic way of protest. When everybody is allowed to protest, partake in the protest, why am I not being allowed? If my right is violated, then the state is answerable to me. This was his prayer. All right. In this case, the Supreme Court said there is no relationship between Article 20, 19 and 21. Right? The court said there is no relation between Article 19 and Article 21. They are two different rights. A.K. Gopalan is bending backwards, right? Is bending backwards to, or he's giving, he is building castle out of air, right? He's taking reasons out of thin air to prove his point, right? So the court did not accept his argument. So the court said there is no relationship between 19 and 21, and in this case we have to focus only on Article 21. The state has the power to deprive a person's personal liberty. Now what the state has to, what the court has to do is whether there was a procedure established by law. So the court ruled, the court will look into these aspects: whether there was a law and whether the law is valid, whether the law is in force, does the law establish a procedure, and whether the procedure is followed. If there was a law constitutionally valid, remaining in force, and the law provides for a procedure to deprive a person of personal liberty, and if the procedure is followed, then there is no violation of Article 21. So in this case, there is no violation of Article 21. So in order to prove that Article 21 is violated, A.K. Gopalan is unnecessarily bringing Article 25, which cannot be accepted, and the relationship between 19 and 21 was severed because the court said 19 is a different right and 21 is a different right, and personal liberty is a separate right. All right. This order of the Supreme Court was subjected to severe criticism because it is like throwing the baby with bathwater. Why? When the court is going to validate the action of the state depriving a person of his personal liberty, only on these grounds it safeguards the personal liberty only from the executive tyranny. The founding fathers of the constitution have never, though they have created the parliament, though they have conferred upon the parliament the constituent power in certain circumstances, they have never trusted that the parliament will be absolutely neutral, and therefore they have incorporated several safeguards against the parliament too. Hence, there is no guarantee that the parliament or the state legislatures, which operate on the basis of the majority vote, will not pass a law that would be unreasonable. Hence, this judgment of Supreme Court in A.K. Gopalan case was a judgment with anomaly. It was not a complete judgment, it's a judgment with anomaly. Right? So this was prevailing until Maneka Gandhi case. In 1977, Maneka Gandhi was, they said that's not needed, it's a separate right, it's a single right, that's all. Like how A.K. Gopalan demanded, the court said that is not, you are taking reasons, you are building your own reasons. All right. So all that what we'll do is whether personal liberty is violated or not. Yes, deprived. How do they deprive? They deprive through a procedure established by law. So what the court will see, whether there was a deprivation of personal liberty. Yes, there is. Okay, in that case they will check whether there was a law, whether it was a valid law, whether the law was enforced, whether the law has established a procedure, and whether they have followed the procedure. Simple. So in 1977, Maneka Gandhi was detained and her passport was impounded. Right? Her passport was impounded. So when her passport was impounded, Maneka Gandhi moved the Supreme Court under Article 32, stating that the same view. She took A.K. Gopalan's arguments. But the government argued with the judgment of Supreme Court. They said there is a act called Indian Passports Act 1964, a valid law, the law in force. The law has established a procedure for impounding the passport. We have followed the procedure. According to Supreme Court's guideline in A.K. Gopalan case, we are constitutional. There is a law, Indian Passports Act. The law is valid law and the law is in force and the law has given a procedure. We have followed the procedure. Where is the violation? Where is the deprivation of the right? So there is no violation of Article 21, and Maneka Gandhi cannot take any remedy. This was an argument given by the Supreme Court, sorry, Government of India. However, in this case, the Supreme Court reversed its right. It reversed its order of A.K. Gopalan case. The court now accepted the view that the term personal liberty. Shall I put this off? So the court said the term personal liberty in Article 21 is not a singular right. It's not a standalone singular right, but it is a pack of rights. Because it is, the court also said that the term, it is a pack of rights which is very difficult to interpret exhaustively at one go. You cannot interpret what is personal liberty completely. You cannot prepare an exhaustive list of rights what comprise personal liberty. And the court further went on. Out of all, the most important particular rights which comprise personal liberty have been listed in Article 19 in clause 1 between clauses A and G. Clear? So the term personal liberty is a pack of right which is, of which the most important rights are enlisted in 19 clause 1, but not limited to that. But not, there can be more number of rights, right? So Article 19 and 21 are not, Article 19 and Article 21 are not watertight compartments. They are interrelated. So these 5 points are not enough. So to deprive any person of his right to life or liberty, there should have been a law. The law must be a valid law. The law must be in force. The law must establish a procedure, and this procedure is subjected to the question of reasonableness, the test of reasonableness. Hence, it is not a mere procedure, right? It is not a mere procedure, but a reasonable process or a due process. All right. So any person's right to life or personal liberty after Maneka Gandhi case can be deprived only upon a procedure established by law, and that procedure, even though established by a valid law, the law may not be constitutionally invalid. The law is very much constitutionally valid, but still the procedure established by law will be subjected to test of reasonableness on the case by case method. So this was the judgment of Maneka Gandhi case. Now in Maneka Gandhi case, the court, the government of India placed another argument. When Maneka Gandhi is detained or something else, her passport is impounded only to prevent her from going abroad, and it has got nothing to do with 19 class 5, 19 class 1, subclass D. Because 19 class 1 subclass D says every citizen of India shall have the right to freedom of movement within the territory of India. And how can you argue that passport is to prevent you from escaping out of the country? So it doesn't have any relationship with 19 class 1 subclass D. The court said no. The right to, though the constitution, though article 19 clause 1 subclass D says there is a right to freedom of movement within the territory of India, it includes the right to move out of the country and to come back. So within the territory of India is subjected to wider interpretation, not to the strict literal interpretation of the phrase. Hence, in the Maneka Gandhi case, they said the right to freedom of movement guaranteed by 19 clause on subclass D is inclusive of the right to move out of the country as well as to come back. Because as long as you are a citizen of India, the laws enacted by the, we'll be studying it while doing parliament. According to Article 245, the law enacted by the parliament will have extraterritorial jurisdiction. Your passport is valid out of the country, and how is your passport valid? Which law validates it? Indian Passports Act, which means the Indian Passports Act is more operative out of the country in practice than within the country. Hence, the freedom of movement also includes the right to move out as well as to come back. So this is the importance of procedure established by law and personal liberty.